International business experience earned before graduation day. Joining us for this week's Smith Business Close-Up is Guillermo Olivos, Assistant Director of Programming and Social Entrepreneurship for the Center of Social Value Creation at the University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business. Guillermo, thank you very much for being with us. Tell us about your most recent trip.
Yeah, certainly, Jeff. So this past January, for the first 2 weeks of the month, I took 22 undergraduate students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, on a global studies course entitled Doing Business in Thailand, Social Value Creation and Entrepreneurship. So we spent about half of our time in Bangkok, visiting with corporations and seeing their CSR initiatives in the city as well as outside the city, and also did some time up in Chiang Mai, which is a northern city in Thailand, looking at some of the more grassroots social entrepreneurship efforts that Thai organizations are implementing.
Tell us about how the focus might differ from what people might perceive as the traditional destinations of business school travel, the financial centers in Tokyo, London, and so forth.
Absolutely. Well, Bangkok and Thailand in general, it's not necessarily a developing country. It's one of the Asian tigers from the 70s, 80s, but, at the same time, it isn't the Japanese stock exchange. So the goal of the course and a way that it might differ from a more metropolitan trip to a place like Paris or London or Tokyo was really looking at companies and how they were integrating with different initiatives with different classes of society. And I think the goal of that trip and being able to have that as an aspect of the students' experiences differed greatly from a trip where you might just be doing, Fortune 500 visits the whole time.
What do you think the students got out of it? What do you think their expectations going in were, and maybe how did the actual trip differ from that?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. So being a trip led by the Center for Social Value Creation, the class naturally attracted a lot of students that care about social entrepreneurship and nonprofit management and social value creation. But a lot of the students really came into the class with an Americanized concept of what that might entail. And the way that a society like Thailand approaches social value creation is very different. It's a more collectivist society than the United States, which is an individualist society at heart. 95% of Thailand is Buddhist, and so you see that sort of Buddhist way of thinking and not only giving back to the individual, but also giving back to society and the environment as a more entrenched facet of business operations, whether you're talking to CEOs of major companies, all the way down to small grassroots operations in villages in the north part of the country. And so to have the students sort of reframe how they think about things like social entrepreneurship and things like, business delivering value beyond dollars and profit maximization in that culture was a really unique experience for them. I saw that theme resonate in a lot of their final papers. So I think they got out of it what I had been planning for them to get out of it from a pedagogical perspective.
So they got to see it kind of in its most developed, highest form. Any examples come to mind of individuals you met, companies you saw, or organizations that are doing things that maybe could be transplanted here?
That's a really good question. So one organization that we visited on the first day was a group called the Goodwill Group Foundation, and they did a lot of education work for women that were, for the most part, trying to transition out of the sex industry and acquire skills in English and clerical work, things like that, to transition into tourism. And what was really surprising that I saw in a couple of my students' papers was a tie between what they saw this organization doing in Thailand and some of the human trafficking issues that we have actually in the DC area right in our backyard. And it was really refreshing to sort of see them acknowledge that education is really critical in giving people that might be, stuck in a bad situation, a criminal situation, opportunities to move out of that.
And how do you see global experiences like that fitting into a traditional business education?
I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, with the way that our society is interconnected today, you can't come out with a business degree, whether at the undergraduate level or the master's level, without an implicit understanding of the cultural differences across borders. You can't do business, I think, or become that business leader that we try to espouse and build here at Smith without understanding that not everything works the way that business works in the United States.
Good place to leave it. Guillermo Olivos joining us from the Smith School of Business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.